Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. So we are in. We just got done with the first match, or the first series of matches in the knockout portion. So as you guys know, Wesley did knock out Alireza Firouzja. So now he is heading to the semifinals. So there's going to be like a final four situation going on. And so for all of my people that are from the Philippines, magandang umaga, aking mga kaibigan, kamusta? I got maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga channel, video. I got that wrong. So I have, for anybody who is coming to my channel for the first time, let me see, maligayang pagdating sa aking channel. Welcome to my, I'm gonna get that down all the way. You know, I gotta take a peek, you know, because I'm not speaking my native languages here, you know. And so for all of my people that might be speaking Farsi, that are coming from Iran or Farsi speaking country, kheli mamnoon, appreciate it very much. Salam to you. Appreciate you guys coming by and taking a look at my video. You know, if you have any tweaks for me, if there's anything that you'd like me to say slightly different, be sure to let me know. But I am constantly practicing, constantly working on my words. You know, I'll be getting the stuff a little bit better as time goes on. But anyway, if you guys are ready to go, let's go ahead and take a look, see what we got for this game. All right, so we got D4, knight to F6. So we have the Indian to start with. Of course, as you guys know, I mean, we can go into like, you know, some Queen's Gambit type stuff. Some, let me see, this is the Marshall. We could go into like, you know, Queen's Gambit, you know, stuff like this. Even like a Catalan type stuff. So there's many different options from this particular point. But we do see knight to C3, and then we see D5, and we have the Queen's Pawn Chigorin, you know, named after Mikhail Chigorin, an old Russian grandmaster. And they actually have the Russian school is actually started by Mikhail Chigorin. If I'm not mistaken, I think I'm correct on that. Don't hold me to it. We got bishop to F4. We got A6. You know, we don't want any knight to B5 stuff coming because, of course, you know, we're double attacking this pawn. So we see E3. We got E6 by black. We got G4 by white. Crazy ambitious. We got bishop coming to B4. Knight to E2. Because, you know, of course, we can't move this one. So that's not even something you have to write down. Only legal move, knight to E2. We see castles by black. We have A3. We got bishop back to E7, you know, because of course, you know, if we trade here, this isn't going to be, you know, very beneficial for black because, I mean, you just gave up the bishop basically for no reason. So we're not going to be doing that. Just give your opponent the bishop pair. So bishop comes back to E3. Like I said, we have G5. So, you know, white is going on a crazy attack. It's not too bad. I mean, it's not unsound. You know, it is a little bit ambitious considering the fact that your king is stuck in the middle of the board. So hopefully you're castling queenside. So we see a knight to H5. We got H4 because of course once we have knight taking F4, we see knight taking F4, and we have to make sure that this pawn, you know, and everything is protected. So we see C5. Now there's two different things with this particular move. The first thing is, you know, white has this this pawn center somewhat established. So there are no F5s. So C5 is going to be your most logical break in this position. Also as well, you know, your pawns are pointing in this direction. So this is also like kind of an indicator of like where you need to attack, kind of in the direction that your pawns are pointing. And so, you know, it's not like a golden rule, but, you know, generally when you're thinking about attacking the base of somebody's pawn structure, you know, you're going to be doing it in the direction that your pawns are pointing. So we see bishop to D3, and we see C4. And bishop to D3 is actually, did I do that correctly? Yeah, bishop to D3 is the novelty of the game. It's the first time we've seen this played, and we do see C4. So, you know, of course, you have a couple of options. You know, you can back up the bishop to E2, back it up to F1. There really isn't a whole lot else other than, you know, the sacrifice of the bishop on H7. This is slightly better for black. It's not an unsound, you know, sacrifice, but it's definitely not your classic bishop sacrifice. You know, when you have your knight here and your knight comes to g5 and, you know, you're trying to take with the pawn here, bringing the queen here. So it's not your typical sacrifice, but, you know, a lot of the success of a sacrifice comes from how the person can defend. If they don't play correctly, then you can basically prove your sacrifice. But if they do defend correctly and it's not a sound sacrifice, you can end up paying for it dearly. But we see king takes h7, and something I'm going to be noting in about 15 moves is the severe calculation that I felt like this take to actually make this sacrifice, because this goes very, very deep. So we see queen to h5 with check, king comes to g8, we have g6, we have pawn takes g6, knight takes g6, we have rook to f5, we got queen to h8 with check, we have king to f7, queen to h7, we got bishop to f6, we got e4, trying to open the position a little bit, get castled and stuff like that on this side. And that's the other thing as well. When you do sacrifice a piece, unless it's just like thoroughly, completely winning, and you're trying to prove the sacrifice, you do have to play very, very actively. So that's something that Firouzja is actually doing here. You know, he's trying to create threats. He's trying to, you know, maybe push the pawn further more. You know, he is getting all of his pieces in place. So yes, it's probably slightly better for black. It's not like it's completely winning, but something you have to notice is that, you know, black doesn't have their queen side pieces in play. So even though you have given up a piece as white, you know, you do pretty much have all of your pieces, and then after castles, you have your last remaining piece coming into the play. So if you can continuously attack your opponent and not allow him to develop his pieces, then your sacrifice can become very successful. So we have pawn takes e4, knight to h8 with check. We got king to e7. We have castles by white. And as you can see, like I said, I mean, you are down a piece, but you do have all of your pieces pretty much like in the attack of trying to get this king. So it's looking pretty good. And like I said, I mean, you know, I think this took like a crazy amount of calculation. I'm not sure how long Firouzja actually sat there, but it just seemed like it took a lot of calculation for him to get to this point, because this is very precise play. This is very computer-like precision that he did this sacrifice. So even though it wasn't like the soundest sacrifice ever, he is following this up very, very, you know, strong. So he's making things pretty difficult for Wesley So. But, you know, as you guys are familiar with Wesley So, he does defend with computer-like precision as well. So it's very hard to get him into like a really bad position just because you sacrificed a piece. So we do see knight to d7, trying to, you know, get our pieces out. Knight takes on e4. We see knight back to f8. We got queen to g8. We have queen to e8. We have h5. Knight comes to d7. And we see knight to g6 with check. The king comes to d8. We see queen taking e8, king taking d8. We got knight to d6. So, you know, we did sacrifice a piece, but right now we are up a pawn, and we're going to be winning the exchange here because we are forking. So this is really nice here. So we have king to d8. We got knight takes f5, pawn takes f5. We got f4. So, you know, it's not that it's like completely clear, you know, what is going on. You are up the piece for black, but you know, it's not so easy of a position to play. So, it was probably pretty nice sacrifice by Firouzja, even though the computer just says it's a little bit better for black. The computer is seeing like 15, 20 moves deep. We're not computers. So we see a5 for black, you know, trying to see if we can just like rook lift our rook down to here to a6. We see d5 by white. We see rook to a6. And we see rook h to e1. And if you want to go ahead and stop the video here, black is in a pretty good position here. And so there is a nice move and idea in the position that I'm curious how many of you guys would actually see. This is something I've talked about before. So I'll see how many of you guys would come up with this idea. So first, go ahead and pause it and see if you can spot the move. And then, you know, it's even better if you can actually get the idea that's behind the initial move. Okay, cool. So for those of you that recognize that you have a nice juicy outpost here on e4, the move knight to c5 should have come to your vision. If you got that move, good job. I'm proud of you. You guys have a little bit of positional understanding, and you have, you know, listened to some of the stuff I've said. This knight is routing itself to e4, and it's basically making white make a decision of if they want to give up a rook for a knight. which is not going to be beneficial in this particular situation because you do have a rook and 2 bishops. So you definitely don't want to go into that exchange sacrifice. So the knight comes to e5. We see bishop to d7, rook to g1, king to c7, and we see knight takes c4, and then we see knight to e4. And like I said, this knight is doing a very, very good job. So the pieces are starting to coordinate for black. This knight is holding this bishop is holding this pawn. The rook doesn't really have anywhere that it can penetrate, and this knight is just like a monster, you know, just basically controlling and attacking all of these squares. So it is a true octopus. So we see knight to e5. We see king to d6. We see h6, you know, trying to open some lines for these rooks because right now, you know, they're kind of biting on some pawns. So the pawn takes on h6. We have rook to g6. We have h5, rook to h6, and then we have bishop to e8. The main problem that black has in this position is these bishops. You know, there really isn't a good way to get rid of them, and they're very, very annoying. Even though a bishop is not as strong as a rook, you know, they are causing some real problems for black because black doesn't really have, you know, a good active play with his own rook. And they do have the ability to kind of stop the penetration along a file sometimes. So, you know, they can be very hard to play against even though you're up, you know, material somewhat. So the rook comes to h7. We see b5. We got a4. So the knight comes to f2 and we see rook to h6. King comes to c5 because, of course, we couldn't drop the bishop because that's going to be dropping the rook as well. So we see d6, not worrying about the rook on d1. So we see bishop takes e5, pawn takes e5, and we see knight takes d1 here. And then we see d7. D7 is kind of a cute little move because it is discovering an attack on this rook. And it is also attacking this bishop at the same time. So it's a really pickle situation to really be in. So the rook comes to a8, and then the rook comes to h8. Bishop takes d7, rook takes a8, and we have knight to e3. So we got rook to a6, we have knight to c4, we got e6, we got bishop back to e8, we have e7, and then we have pawn takes a4, and then we have rook to a8, but then we have knight to d6. So as you guys have seen right here, this knight is like the most important piece that black has had like for the past like 15 moves because it took the rook down here, it plopped itself here in the middle of the board, and now it's perfectly defending, you know, this bishop with the king's help of defending the knight. So this knight has been very, very strong and indispensable. So we see rook takes a5, and then after king to b6, we see rook to a8, and then we see h4. And this is actually the position that Alireza Firouzja does resign in because it is not possible to stop this pawn, ever. This king is not in the box, in the square of the pawn, which is like this. So it is not close enough. It cannot step into the box. And I'm not sure if that's something that he had overlooked or what the situation exactly was. But as you can see, this rook is kind of trapped as well. It doesn't have the ability to go here, here, or here. It can go over here, but that's not really putting it in the way to be able to stop this pawn. This pawn is really preventing this rook from coming to this rank. If we were to see, let's say something like this, you know, and then this rook cannot come down here and it can't come here. So this rook is really, really stuck. It's not living the best life. So in lieu of that, like I said, Alireza Firouzja did resign. And so that is that game. And so I think maybe tomorrow or the next day, we're going to be playing the semifinals. So I'll see who So is matched up with. And I'll be covering those games as well. So Maraming Salamat Po, Aking Magat Kabegan for stopping by and taking a look at my game. So Haley Mamnoon for my people that are from, you know, that speak Farsi, that are from either Iran or, you know, Afghanistan or any of the other Farsi speaking countries. Assalamu alaikum and ma assalamu to you. I will see you guys next time. I appreciate it.